On January 6, France and the United Kingdom inked a deal that could put boots on the ground in Ukraine after the war, signaling a stronger European security role. Britain, France, and Ukraine agreed in principle to form a multinational force for what they described as peacekeeping and stabilization duties centered on Kyiv. But the entire idea hinges on whether the Russia-Ukraine war ends soon, because a deployment becomes far more complex if fighting continues or restarts. A report by the Kyiv Independent laid out several key issues that could hinder the France-UK plan, warning the proposal faces serious political and military obstacles. The report said that while roughly 90% of Trump's peace proposal is reportedly ready, the remaining 10% is still deadlocked and blocking a final agreement. It added that loose ends remain over territorial concessions and who controls the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, two topics neither side wants to compromise on. Ukraine has repeatedly insisted it wants to remain in its current troop positions, arguing that any pullback would reward aggression and weaken its defenses. Russia, however, has been demanding that Ukrainian forces step back from parts of the Donetsk Oblast region, making troop lines a central battleground in negotiations. On Zaporizhzhia, Trump reportedly floated a framework for trilateral control of the nuclear plant, attempting to create a compromise structure for operations and oversight. That proposal is said to involve Russia, Ukraine, and the United States sharing operational responsibilities at the plant, splitting control to reduce conflict risks. But reports say Ukraine would prefer a deal only with the United States and does not want Russia included in Zaporizhzhia arrangements, keeping Moscow sidelined. Another reason the UK or France plan may obstruct peace is Putin's reported opposition to NATO troops in Ukraine, even if they arrive after a ceasefire. Russia has been firm that any NATO troop presence on Ukrainian territory would be unacceptable, warning it could be treated as a provocation or escalation. The Kyiv Independent cautioned that if Macron and Starmer deploy troops, Russia could reject a peace deal altogether, arguing the terms threaten its security interests. A third hurdle is the shortage of troops available for deployment, because many European militaries are already stretched and under strength. Analysts quoted in the report said the peacekeeping force plan remains vague on how many soldiers are needed, leaving a critical question unanswered. Former UK Security Minister Tom Tugendhat also raised alarms about Britain's troop shortage, warning the country cannot sustain a large long-term mission. Tugendhat reportedly said only about 10,000 out of 700,000 UK troops can be deployed at one time, highlighting the limits of readiness and rotation. He summed it up bluntly by saying the math does not add up, adding that France does not have a bigger army to fill the gap, in comments to Talk TV. On January 6, a coalition of the willing meeting was held to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine, bringing together supporters looking to shape a post-war framework. During the meeting, a declaration was signed pledging guarantees for Kyiv against future threats, aiming to deter renewed Russian aggression after any settlement. Key components of the plan reportedly include a multinational force inside Ukraine and US-led ceasefire monitoring, tying European troops to American oversight mechanisms. However, Germany's Friedrich Merz has now argued that Russia's consent must be sought for Kyiv security guarantees, a stance that could slow or reshape the plan. On January 8, Merz also said Germany would only send troops after approval from the Bundestag, underscoring the domestic political constraints on any deployment.
Was die Koalition der Willigen betrifft.
As for the coalition of the willing, I discussed this with the British Prime Minister and the French President immediately after the Berlin meeting in December of last year, that there is such a memorandum of understanding with Ukraine regarding troops in Ukraine. However, I want to make it clear here, so that no misunderstandings arise, we are talking about security guarantees following a ceasefire. There is no one here, not even a single member state in the EU or beyond, who believes that we are now in should go to Ukraine to intervene in the ongoing conflict. We support Ukraine, we do everything to ensure that this war ends, but in this context, we are only talking about military safeguarding of peace, a ceasefire agreement. And the question of which countries can contribute what to this, we are currently discussing it, and with the answer, we are at the beginning and not at the end. I have said from my side, we are prepared to also participate. We are ready to also provide our own security guarantees, including through the Bundeswehr. Initially, however, through appropriate allocation from neighboring countries. How far we can go overall does not depend on me alone. For that, I need a decision by the federal government. It may also require a mandate from the German Bundestag. But again, we are far from that. The sequence must be, first a ceasefire, then security guarantees for Ukraine for a long-term agreement with Russia. And all of this cannot happen without Russia's approval, and we are probably still quite far from that.
Even UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said Parliament will decide on British troops in Ukraine, indicating that any deployment would face intense debate at home.
There's plenty of things that Geoffrey and I have agreed on or disagree with over the years, but let me say, yesterday I stood side by side with our European and American allies and President Zelensky at the Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris. Mr. Speaker, we made real progress on security guarantees, which are vital for securing a just and lasting peace. Along with President Macron and President Zelensky, we agreed a declaration of intent on the deployment of forces in the event of a peace deal. Mr. Speaker, we will set out the details in a statement at the earliest opportunity. I will keep the House updated as the situation develops, and were troops to be deployed under the declaration signed, I would put that matter to the House for a vote.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was with NATO that there would only be deployment after a ceasefire. It would be to support Ukraine's capabilities, it would be to conduct deterrence operations, and to construct and protect military hubs. The number will be determined in accordance with our military plans, which we are drawing up and looking to other members to support. So the number I will put before the House before we were to deploy. But I'll do more than that. If we went as far as a legal instrument to deploy, which would be necessary, I would then have a debate in this House so all members could know exactly what we're doing, make their points of view, and then we would have a vote in this House on the issue, which to my mind is the proper procedure in a situation such as this.